Hi, and welcome to Conductor, where we are two sisters on a mission to amplify women's voices on the podium. Join us as we interview leaders in the field of choral music, share resources, and build a community for current and future teacher conductors, all while exploring the gender divide. I'm Kyra Starr. And I'm McKenna Stenson, and we are Conductor. Well, good afternoon, everyone. We are so excited to be here this afternoon with the fabulous Dr. Pearl Shangkuan on the podcast today. Welcome, Dr. Shangkuan.
Glad to be here.
So, as you know, listeners, we're just going to introduce a little bit about our fabulous guest. So here is our bio for the day. Dr. Pearl Shangkuan is a highly sought-after conductor, lecturer, and clinician who has led performances and workshops on 6 continents. She is the national president-elect of the American Choral Directors Association, having previously served on the board of directors of Chorus America, as well as ACDA Central Division President and ACDA Michigan State President. She is the chorus director of the Grand Rapids Symphony, a Grammy-nominated professional orchestra, and professor emerita of music at Calvin University in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Appointed in 2022 as the editor of Hinshaw Music, a major choral music publisher in North America, she also has a signature choral series with her songs and is the music editor of the Calvin Institute of Christian Worship choral series published by GIA. She has conducted several times at Carnegie Hall and other major concert halls in the U.S. and was an invited guest lecturer at the World Symposium of Choral Music held in Seoul, South Korea. Her guest conducting engagements regularly take her to Europe, Asia, and across North America. Dr. Shangkuan has served on the jury of several international choral competitions in Europe and Asia, and has led conducting masterclasses for the ACDA National and Chorus America conferences. She has also been artist in residence for various prominent graduate music programs and institutions across the U.S. She has conducted numerous all-state choirs, ACDA National and Division Honor Choirs, and choral festivals nationally and internationally, as well as headlining several ACDA state and other professional conferences. She has commissioned and premiered numerous choral works, and her choirs have performed at ACDA National, Division, and state conferences. The Michigan YWCA honored her with its Arts Tribute Award in 2007. In 2013, Michigan ACDA honored her with the Maynard Klein Choral Award for Artistic Excellence and Lifetime Leadership in Choral Music. In 2020, she received a Calvin University Award for Excellence in Teaching. In 2023, NCCO gave her its Honorary Life Member Award for Distinguished Leadership and Extraordinary Service to the choral community, both nationally and internationally. Welcome, Dr. Shangkuan.
So glad to be here.
We're so excited to have you here today. Would you tell us a little bit about how you came to choral music?
I grew up in a church where they had a fully graded children's choral program. So to this day, I always ask people, what do our children learn when they come to our places of worship? So I clearly remember when I was about 8 years old. So I was in this children's choir and we had to sing on Christmas Eve. And so, they lined up the children's choir. We all stood there, sang our set, and then they sent the children out of the sanctuary because, it was just such a packed service, and probably for fear that the kids would make a lot of noise. Now, for some reason, I'm usually a very law-abiding person. For some reason, I thought, I had heard or read somewhere that the adult chorus was going to sing Handel's Messiah, portions of it. This little 8-year-old kid snuck back into the balcony of the church, hid behind the railing, poked my head out, and they sang Hallelujah Chorus. And, for an 8-year-old kid, I didn't have the vocabulary. All I did was wow. And this is not some professional choir. It's a church choir, a good church choir. But the music that created that spark in the heart of an 8-year-old. So to this day, especially when I conduct Hallelujah Chorus or other pieces, I'm always thinking, is there an 8-year-old Pearl sitting out in the house where we can kind of, create that spark? Another event was I was in 2nd grade, and, I was an incredibly shy kid. I'm still very much an introvert. So it's a kid who could hardly lift her head to look at you straight when I'm talking to you, just incredibly shy. And my 2nd grade teacher, Miss Flores, said, "Pearl, you can sing." I never thought of it that way. And because I attended, it was a Christian school, we had to sing for assembly. And each class had to get up and sing. And it was just torturous for me to stand out there just to raise my head up. But my second grade teacher, who was not my music teacher, said, Pearl, you can sing. And so I just kind of stood there and sang. And I thought, looking back again, it was just that one comment from my, general second grade teacher. It was also around that time that I realized I could read. And ever since then, I was always this little kid that would show up at the school library. I became great friends with the school librarian because I would poke my head in and, ask for the next Nancy Drew book or the next Boxcar Children book, one book at a time. And so those, I think, were so formative. And I was like 8 or 9 years old at that point. So that's kind of how it got started. And then as I grew up in that system, I continued to be a part of it. I think I was about 12 or 13 when one of the small ensembles in the church, a little bit like what we would now call praise band or something, needed an accompanist. And so I could sight read well, kind of play piano and everything. And so they dragged me in to serve as their accompanist, those poor people, but I played for them for every single, whatever event they had to sing. And when I was about 15 or so, my church had a program for kids of that age to learn from a professional organist. And so it was a summer program. And I went through the lesson, but I am no organist by any stretch of the imagination. I have great respect for them. But I think those childhood experiences of being nurtured in an environment with music was really, formative in my life to go this route. Even though when I got to the end of high school, I didn't know what I was going to do. But just because I've been doing this for so long, I just like, okay, well, I'll apply to some music school and go from there.
Oh, I love that so much, Dr. Shangkuan. I think McKenna and I can relate to being those kids in church because our parents were both church musicians. And so I remember distinctly every Christmas Eve being in the loft looking down and the brass playing, and just it was just ingrained in our lives. Kind of like you said, it was just always there and a part of what you were doing. And what a great reminder. We love when people talk about their influential teachers at a young age saying, hey, you can do this. It's such a good just reminder to be kind to our tiny humans and to encourage them to do things that are scary, because you never know in what way you'll influence them.
Right.
Well, it's been so wonderful to hear a little bit about those initial musical experiences. And so we're wondering, from those precious moments that were so inspirational, how did you decide to choose choral music as your career?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so when I went to music school, I attended Westminster Choir College, and I was a piano major. And, everybody had to sing in that school. But because having grown up in a church environment, in a school environment that was so, influential for me to learn choral music, I just kind of went that route. I did think even before then whether I would go into instrumental music, because as a pianist in training, that's something I'm more comfortable with. To this day, I would still often think of that as my primary instrument, because that's how I can express myself the best. But to go into music school, I just thought, well, there's something I've done and I'm comfortable with it. Might as well just go with it and see what comes out of it. And then the path just kind of took on its own.
That's amazing. Dr. Quist was my teacher at the University of Miami, and she talked a lot about Westminster Choir College and how influential that school has been for generations of people. So I know that had to have been really special, and what a great way to incorporate both your skills as a pianist and a singer into your undergraduate studies. Love that so much. You've mentioned,
To another childhood experience, I was in a community children's chorus, and it was taught by, often in those days, women taught children's choir. She was one feisty conductor. Her name was Miss Celia Ong, and she took us around and we toured. I think that again was another very formative. Little would I know that years later I would be touring with my own choirs all over, right? Yeah. So sorry to interject that, but I just thought, that's another very important because of children's community chorus program.
Oh, love that so much. We've definitely made an effort on our last couple of seasons to talk specifically to people in the children's choir arena, because we know that it's so formative for a lot of young musicians to have those touring experiences and to be treated like a professional ensemble when you're 8, 9 years old. So that's incredible that that was so influential as well. Our last kind of introduction question for you, Dr. Shangkuan, is who, which you already mentioned a couple of teachers, who and or what was helpful or influential in getting you to where you are on your journey today?
Oh, so many. Dr. Joseph Flummerfelt, for many years the artistic director at Westminster Choir College. His students were petrified of him. Ask any of his former students. The standards were so incredibly high. To this day, I really feel he's my musical father. So much of what he's ingrained in me would come out. It's like, when we say, 20 years later, you talk like your mom. I'm like, oh my goodness, this is what my musical father, the lessons that he tried to instill in us, just everything about how he taught us and how he approached. To this day, I would still think, I wonder what Dr. Flummerfelt would do. Years after I graduated, I went back and we just became friends, and I just carry him in my heart all the time. Another one was my piano teacher, Mr. Harold Zabrak. So he was my teacher at Westminster, and opened a whole new world for me. Any Mozart sonata, any Haydn sonata became a string quartet. To this day, it influences me in that way, because when I'm doing something by Haydn or Mozart, I tend to think in that way. If I'm dealing with a large orchestral score, I tend to look at where that work has come from, or historically and such not. And he, again, to this very, very shy student, gave me the space with great encouragement and some really awful singing. If you sat next to him, it was just incredibly growly singing. He would, conduct through Chopin etude and everything and hit you along the way while he's conducting. But that being able to express your inner being through your music, I think it just, those formative years of training. Frauke Hassmann was there, as a vocal pedagogue, learning all of that. And she was such an incredibly sweet person. John and Helen Kemp. I ended up being a church music major for my undergrad degree. So Mama Helen, as we come to fondly know of her, they were so influential in, I think, creating that understanding of service to God and service to the church. And, Mama Helen, of course, was kind of the queen of choral music. So learning how to work with children and having that childlike faith, childlike wonder that I hope has stayed in my heart. And so those were some of my most influential teachers.
And now a quick word from our sponsors.
Conductor, 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 conductor.
The Conductor Choral Series, powered by Music Spoke, is an intentional platform that highlights the voices of women and their allies in the choral music world. This series is designed to elevate and celebrate the contributions of women throughout history, as well as those currently shaping the music scene. Its name, Conductor, intertwines the role of a conductor with the concept of empowerment and the recognition of women in music, a field where their contributions have often been overlooked or underrepresented.
The series serves as a celebration of diverse women's voices, composers, conductors, singers, and advocates, by providing access to choral works that reflect their unique perspectives, creativity, and experiences. Through this collection, Music Spoke gives both emerging and established composers the opportunity to share their voices with the choral community, providing a sense of inclusivity, visibility, and accessibility to repertoire. Check out the Conduct Her Choral Series today for your next concert.
And we're back.
Now, after graduating and starting to teach and whatnot, one of the big reasons I came to Calvin was due to one of my predecessors by the name of Dr. Anton Armstrong. Imagine trying to come after Anton, how that feels like. But in all the years I've been here, he is just an incredible mentor. We are such good friends. We're kind of like siblings from different parents because we look nothing alike each other. We're just dear friends, and his mentorship. As I started to attend ACDA conferences, Dale Warland, this American legend, would often, we call each other convention buddies. For some reason, we got connected. And at every conference, he'll like, Pearl, we need to sit down and have tea or have dinner. I'm like, I'm a young conductor. It's these legendary conductors who've shown me what it is to help develop the next generation. Stephen Paulus was another one. I did some kind of opening act with my women's choir for him. And through the end of his days, he was just such a great supporter, and we did, projects together. Again, to help a young conductor along the way. These were so influential in my life. There are many more yet, but those are really the first ones that rise to the surface in shaping my life as a conductor and teacher.
So, Dr. Shangkuan, I'm in a new phase of life. So I have an 8-month-old at home, and we're starting to expand our reach, and we're going out to listen to different story times throughout the region of Tallahassee that I'm in. And I could listen to you speak all day long. Your voice is so melodious and entrancing. And I was like, I can tell you're such an incredible artist, just in the way that you speak here today. And I'm just feel already so much passion and precision in what you have done for this field, just from the way that you speak about your relationship with mentors and the way that you view mentorship. So we're just so grateful to get to go back and listen to that time and time again.
Here's an offer for you, McKenna. I've got a superpower. This is kind of funny because every time I hold a baby, I don't know if it's because of my voice or whatever, they would conk out. And I'm like, this happens very, very often. So here's an offer for you.
Okay.
Cross, and your baby is having a little hard time, give them to me. Let Choir Mama Pearl take that child.
Oh, Choir Mama Pearl, you're hired. So I can't wait. He's coming to visit at ACDA. So if we see you there, I'll just give him a pass off. He loves people. So, Dr. Shangkuan, already, like I said, we're just so excited to learn from you. And you've had such a remarkable journey in this field of choral music. I remember watching you direct one of the honor choirs in Virginia when I was a public school teacher there, the Virginia Treble All-State. And the experience that my students had with you was just so overwhelmingly positive, joy-filled. They learned in a way that was so tangible that they brought back to the institution and bettered others. So I just want to share that with you. And it was really meaningful for so many of them, because for some of them, it was the first time seeing a woman all-state director. And we would love to ask you about your experience in this field. And when was the first time that you saw a woman conductor at the collegiate or professional level that wasn't you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all my teachers were male. During the time that I was in training, Frauke Hassmann was the only woman conductor at the collegiate level that I saw regularly. She was the assistant conductor, though, so she rarely conducted in front of the group. I wasn't in her beginning choir, and she was the vocal coach for the Westminster Symphonic Choir. Later on, I would see Anne Howard-Jones or Charlene Archbeck, Judy Willoughby Miller, Janet Galvan, I remember very fondly because I was in grad school and she conducted one of the, I think, Eastern Division Honor Choir, Treble Honor Choir. And I thought, here is this very petite woman. Her conducting was so full of grace and also full of power. So while I did not study with any other women teachers, just seeing them at conference settings was eye-opening for me. And it was a great encouragement that, you pick that up because, during those days where you mostly see a male conductor, you have to kind of think through, what would I be like on stage? And little did I know, even during those training years, that I would be doing what I do now. I was just really there to learn about the skills. I never ever thought I'd be conducting honor choir festival and any of that I was just glad to be at the conference to learn. Yeah, and because I was a very young mom, so talk about you having a baby. It's kind of like the reverse order. I had my first child soon after my undergrad years. So I had a 7-month-old through a full-time graduate program. And I had a church job and I had a piano studio. I have no idea how I got through that. And then I had a second child, and shortly after that realized, oh, here's an opportunity to work on my doctorate. But my second child is a disabled child. So it's not just like taking care of one kid. At this point, 2 kids felt like 4. So I well resonate with people who go through that. And it was just a life that, just kind of sheer grit to get through it, to get all these kids and all of that, just to get through my graduate program. To this day, I don't know. I've never had the luxury of studying music, of being in an office to actually study something. I've kind of mastered studying in bits and pieces. Most of my programming happens when I'm washing my hair. My teaching techniques come when I'm cooking meals for my family. So that's why I use a lot of food in my teaching, and I never even realized that until one of my students said, Dr. Shangkuan, do you know that you use a lot of food imagery in your teaching? And this choir is at 11:30. All of our stomachs are growling just listening to you talk about food while you're teaching. But I deviate from that. It's just all of life, right, together in music making and in trying to negotiate the other parts of our lives.
Oh, Dr. Shangkuan, that was just so beautiful. Everything that you said just now, I want to echo McKenna's statement that as soon as you started talking, I just wanted to compliment you immediately because your recall is incredible and you're just so well spoken. I want to emulate you in my own interviewing technique. Of course, I really loved hearing about your experiences kind of navigating the field with these other women like Charlene Archibek, like Janet Galvan, seeing them in the field some years ahead of you and saying to yourself, like, oh, I just am aware of what you're doing, and it's exciting to see you on the podium, even if you at that time weren't thinking, I'm going to be a DCA at a college one day. Because I think that resonates with me, that this wasn't always my goal, but I'm so excited that this is where I am now and that this is where the journey has led me.
I think, too, for anybody out there listening, when you do go to conference, sometimes we're so excited. We want to see the sessions. We want to go to the opening concerts. We want to do all of these things. And somebody really early on in my teaching career said, go to the honor choir rehearsals. Go to the first honor choir rehearsal and watch. And I ended up in a position where I was like the name tag person for the honor choir. Like I made the certificates and I printed name tags. But it meant that for 4 years in a row, I got to be at the onset of this specific honor choir event and getting the opportunity to learn from the warm-ups, from the community building, from the integration of all sorts of techniques. If that's not something you've done before, ACDA right now is coming up. It might have passed, but the next conference, once this airs, might be something to consider, because I definitely saw things that I wanted to emulate and model and were so instrumental in future teaching experiences. So it's just really, really neat that that was also a part of your journey.
Yeah, and seeing the process, the progress, the journey, right? Because we see choirs when they're on stage performing. Those first rehearsals, having done a number of those, wow, those first rehearsals, you really have to lay the groundwork for that. So that's a very, very wise advice to teachers.
I love too how you described planning while you're doing other household tasks like cooking. I experience this all the time. I try and go on a walk with my husband every day if we can. Sometimes it doesn't happen. Sometimes it's not on the cards, but I frequently find myself being the most imaginative during that time where I'm engaged in another activity, but then I just can't help it. I'm kind of overcome with inspiration for the next day's rehearsal or reflection on what just happened. And I think that's important for young educators to hear, that it's okay to not have to sit down and make a lesson plan. And it's wonderful if you can and if that's working for you. And I also think encouraging creativity and curiosity as it comes to you throughout the day is also really important and not something that I'm not sure we've ever talked about on here.
Yeah, it is all of life, I think. When you step on the podium, you bring all of who you are, right? You bring your musical training, but it's also the other aspects of life. I've burned a few dinners along the way because I was so engrossed into thinking about something. Just because the way my life turned out with little kids all throughout the earlier years of my career, that's how I had to manage, right? And so in giving them baths, I might be kind of thinking about something. So yes, they turn a little pruny along the way because mom was just still sitting there and soaping them. But like, oh no, the kid has to get out of the bathtub. All of these real life things, I think, really come to play. And then it forms who we are, what we program, how we teach, and how we conduct even.
Absolutely. I just love that so much, Dr. Shangkuan. You're so wise. This has been wonderful already. You've segued so naturally into some of the other questions we wanted to ask you. You brought up raising your 2 children and having one child who has a disability. That's an element that I'm not sure anybody on the podcast has ever brought into play. And I was a special education minor in my undergraduate studies, and I'm really passionate about just making the world more inclusive. So that's something that's very near and dear to my heart. Would you talk a little bit about navigating those circumstances? You talked about the challenges being in school. Can you talk about what it's been like now as you've progressed in your career and done all of the traveling? How have you balanced all of these elements?
Yeah, Gabe, we call him Super Gabe. His friend from 6th grade called him Super Gabe. So to this day, we call him Super Gabe. There are so many aspects. He can't sing in tune. I mean, before a concert, I can't even be in the same car with him because try dictating any of those pitches, there's nothing. So I finally learned after a while that I have to be in a separate car. I just drive separately to the concert if he's attending one of my concerts. But he has such joy when he's singing his VeggieTale songs or Thomas the Train songs. Those remain his favorite songs to this day. So I have a whole Disney repertoire. I have a whole VeggieTale repertoire and Thomas the Train repertoire, in addition to all of these that I've learned. Yes, it is hard. I will say that it is not easy. To this day, I travel with my twin companions, worry and guilt. He was, for about 6 years, quite ill, struggling with a rare blood disorder. I went in and out, and that required a lot of hospital day treatment. So my husband, this day now, is his primary caregiver, but coordinating all of that as I travel in and out nationally and internationally. The worry of a mom. I would look at Zoom and like, is this kid okay? Because he's only minimally verbal. So and it's only mom who can understand what he's trying to say, the context, or just looking at his facial expressions or whatnot. So every day, wherever I am, he's used to the mom FaceTime because I have to look at him unless, I'm in the air traveling. It's not easy. And so how do I deal with that? And I don't expect, other people, this is just kind of how I deal a little bit with my guilt, is I cook all of his meals ahead of my departure. He is also gluten-free. So, when we first discovered that was like, oh my goodness, what can this poor kid eat? This is many years ago, right? And so just so I know exactly what Gabe is eating, I just, cook all of his meals. Dad is the breakfast shift. Mom is the lunch and dinner. I put them in little containers and write out this huge calendar. And Gabe, even though he can't really speak, he can actually read at about 2nd grade level. So Gabe knows exactly what meal he's having and sometimes has to remind his dad to get them all sorted out. That's his meal. And so that's kind of how I travel to know that he's been taken care of. It could make those few days before I go on a trip, like, I'm like a crazy cook in the kitchen trying to get through my rehearsal. But, 14 days of food is a lot to prepare for, or 19 or 21 days and such. But he's used to that. And we have a system where he knows, where mom is going. He's learned geography from where mom is going. And I would tell him at our daily check, what kind of group I'm working with and that kind of stuff. So those do help me to kind of deal with being the mom side. So whenever I go out to a guest engagement, I would kind of ask them, depending on the rehearsal schedule, like if I see a break in there, I'll convert the time. What time is it now in Michigan? I will go out and do a quick FaceTime just to, just for mom to feel like, okay, everything is taken care of.
And now, a quick word from our sponsors.
Conductor, 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 conductor.
Hey, Kyra.
Hey, McKenna.
You know what choral directors are always looking for?
What?
Well, as choral directors, we are always looking for new pieces to program for our upcoming concerts, and Pavon Publishing is proud to have some outstanding women composers and conductors in its catalog.
Wow, what are some of the new releases?
Well, let me tell you. Canto e Liberta by Diana Saez and Suzette Ortiz for treble voices, piano, and percussion. It was premiered under the direction of Dr. Iris Levine from Conductor Season 1 and is in her Pavon Treble Choral series.
Ukrainian composer Irina Alexichuk's Holy Lord of Hosts is stunning and was premiered in the U.S. by Grant Gershon and the LA Master Chorale. Grant has launched his new series with Pavon in support of this remarkable composer.
Zenaida Robles, one of the most sought-after female writers, will have her latest composition, The Summit is Nigh, premiered at the ACDA National Convention in Dallas this March. Again, a Conductor Season 2 interviewee.
Janaea Robison, conductor of the Lutheran National Choir, has 2 new offerings: an SATB voicing of her successful setting of I Wonder as I Wander, and new editions of Bach's cantata BWV 118, with alternative lyrics that enables performances from Advent and Christmas to Palm Sunday and Easter. Check out Pavon Publishing today at pavonpublishing.com.
And we're back.
If I may share a story, during those years when he had this rare blood disorder, it so often meant, going to the hospital after I would teach my daytime classes, right? 2 stories, if I may. So one time here I am finished teaching the day, ran to the hospital, met my husband and him and, in the infusion room and all of that. And then got home, fed the family dinner, put some makeup on, put my concert dress on. I had a concert that evening. Warmed the chorus up. As the concert began, I stood there and realized I had nothing more to give. I was at the end of my rope. It was a Friday night concert. I am standing there trying to reach within myself, being the college professor, running to the hospital to meet my son for his treatment, coming home being mom, and now getting to put my hat on and standing in front of a choir, in a large hall. For that particular concert, there was a treble guest choir, high school treble guest choir. And so they sang from the balcony in the cathedral. And so they would sing a couple of songs, and then me and my choir were supposed to come in. And so I'm standing there trying to galvanize any drop of anything so I could get through a 2-hour concert. And the first piece they sang was Lift Thine Eyes by Mendelssohn. Lift thine eyes unto the hills. Where does your help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. And I tell you, we're conductors, right? We know how to program. And yet, as I stood there on that podium, I felt this energy went through my spine. And I kind of stood taller because that energy came through and lifted me. And then I could go on and conduct the concert. Another story was right in the pediatric oncology portion of the hospital. So they got to know mom, because mom would dash in with her briefcase, with her music, and find a little corner in the room so that I can pull out scores, And I was preparing an all Bach program with the Grand Rapids Symphony. And as a chorus director, you don't often get to conduct your own symphony. But here was a program, and I'm sitting in an oncology ward preparing the most joyful music of Bach. And I'm sitting there thinking, this joyful music in a place of such desolation, You know, I could see other kids who were a lot sicker than Gabe. And you think, what did they do to deserve this, right? But also in that program, or for another program that time, I was preparing Ubi Caritas by Duraflame. So here's mom sitting in a corner of the oncology ward, and it suddenly dawned on me, Ubi Caritas Deus Ibis, where love and charity dwell, there God is. And I'm looking around the room, and I see the love of the doctors and the nurses for their little patients, the love of the parents for their kids, the love of the kids for their parents. In a place like that, where you think, where's God in all of this, right? Suddenly the love in that room it just glowed. And so when I talk about life in our music making, what does a 10th century chant have to do with a 21st century mom sitting on the floor of an oncology ward studying her music, right? And so it's those kinds of life stories that I hope comes out in my music and when I work with my singers. Not that I want to relive any of that experience, but it's just how, life has shown. And life has shown that it is so often through the music that we do in giving that we receive. Right? We're giving that gift, we think, to our audience, but we as the performers, as the conductors, we're actually strengthened and nourished by them and can continue living and navigating through our own lives because of what we're teaching.
Well, I think that's the podcast there, everyone. Dr. Shangkuan, thank you for sharing so much about your journey and the incredible mother that you are. Mama Shangkuan is someone who I already feel so close to just from this experience. And I know that anyone who's come into your space has just learned so much, not only about choral music, but about bettering the world through art and bettering the world through the experiences and the hardships that we move through, and the tenacity and grit that you have experienced to be able to transcend others through choral music, to be able to transcend through those challenges is, again, of course, not something anyone would want to relive, but the way that you use that growth mindset, the way that you took these difficult challenges and always saw something bigger, something better, something higher power in those experiences, that is not common. That's not common. And I think for students to see, we never know what anyone's going through. And I think that's the other part, that so often we assume that nobody else has anything else going on, right? Our busy is more busy, is our hard is harder. And the reality is everybody's life is so different, and we don't need to assume anything at all. We just need to try to see the best in people and to uplift and support those as they're going through difficult challenges.
Indeed. I can't tell you how many rehearsals I walk into my own rehearsal room with, just in a hard place, especially the years of Gabe's illness. And once the music begins, you are transported to a different place. This is a rehearsal. It's not, performance, right? And we have that privilege of creating that safe environment, that warm environment, so that our students, wherever they're coming from, once the music begins, can draw them into a different space for that time of the rehearsal.
And I think kids know, that's the other thing that's so important. You talked about some of your childhood memories and some of these magical moments through music. And I was talking to a friend, mentor, colleague about the mom guilt, and I said, how is it possible that I get in to leave and I get it, I cry, like I cry in the car on the way to the gig. I get to the gig, I feel better. I feel like I'm doing something important. I'm helping. This is my way to help. And she said, my son, when he had to write about what's mom's job, wrote a little paragraph, and it said, my mom has a special job. Like, my mom has a special job. And so just to also know that I know Gabe, just by knowing the lunch charts, like the ways that you made him a part of that process. And there's really just, you already said all the amazing, beautiful things. So just thank you for, again, sharing that. I know, Kyra, you wanted to say something.
I'm just almost brought to tears because it's just such a great reminder of why we do what we do. And like you were just saying, it was just a rehearsal, or it was just that one concert with the treble choir, and you showed up and were exhausted and defeated and depleted. I mean, in every physical and mental way. And then to know that you can have these experiences through music that truly are life-changing is just it's magical. I had this yesterday at my rehearsal with my treble choir. It just feels like there's a lot of chaos happening. And I just looked at them and I said, you matter. Like, what you're doing is amazing. And like the music that we get to make in this room together is unlike anything else. And when you leave this room, know that you are making a difference in the world. You, just by being you and who you are like so beautiful. So it's just just such a good reminder.
Transfers too to our programming.
Yes.
For all the years I taught at Calvin, my students were 18 to 22, and I would say, you're 18 to 22 right now, but I'm programming for your 40, 50-year-old self. I tell them it's not if, but when hardships come to our lives, then what has been planted, what has been embedded in our soul from the years, the rehearsals and the music that we've learned, I hope will bubble up and kind of be a way for you to encourage you to take one more step, right? Life is like one step in front of the next. So it impacts our programming, right? It is a joy and a privilege, and our work really matters.
Well, you've definitely started to segue us into another question we have for you, because Dr. Shangkuan, you have had such a vibrant career that continues. You're an active musician, continuing to impact our field. And we're wondering about some of the changes that you've seen over your time in choral music from the beginning to now. Can you talk about some of the main changes that you've seen, and then maybe some of the things that we're still striving to achieve in the space that is choral music?
I think nowadays, compared to my earlier years, there's actually more opportunities for younger conductors to be doing more events. I think back to my early years, it was kind of like the giants in the field, right? And I think that now there's a conscious effort in giving, and it could be that there are more events, but there's also intentionality in there in providing experience for younger conductors, providing experience for conductors of color, or, advocating for works by composers, younger composers of color. I just think that those are great developments. Explosion of learning global music. Thinking back to the second grade Pearl who discovered she could read, that was the beginning of traveling for me. I could travel through that book to places that I, as a second grade, then couldn't travel, right? Not for many, many years. And so when I do global music with my choirs, or when I guest conduct, we are able to travel either to a different place, or if you're doing historical music, time travel, but just being able to experiment, to explore music from a different culture, I think gives us a small taste. I'm one of those like, okay, I know it could be a little daunting, and I will do it very respectfully, but I don't have to do it perfectly, because my goal is let's just have a moment where we can get into their shoes to understand what music does, or the role of music in that society. It just opens our eyes and broadens our hearts and our minds. So I think, and being in the publishing field too, just seeing the growth of that.
And now, a quick word from our sponsors.
Conductor, 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 conductor.
Hey everyone, come check out the newest collaborations with Conductor and Call Time Clothing. Shop the newest designs from your favorite female conductor-owned clothing line, inspired by choir and music education, made to order just for you. Get one of your own for 35 Canadian, or about 26 American, plus a flat rate shipping fee. Visit calltimeclothing.com today. Do you live near other conductors and want to save on shipping? Order multiple tees in one order so that you only pay one shipping fee. Visit calltimeclothing.com today or follow us on Instagram.
And we're back.
This is just kind of like a sneak preview. I am so excited. Aside from all of these, series that I've developed in my short time with Hinshaw Music, this is just about to roll out. Probably by the time this program rolls out, maybe it's rolled out. It's a series on Native American choral music, written or curated by our Native American choral friends. And coming out next year will be a global series, again, curated by the culture bearers. So there's a slightly different process in it, but I am just so happy, so excited that those global connections will open the whole new world for us too, for me, for us, but also make that connection between North America and these other different cultures. So I think those two are some of the ways that choral music has really developed. Well, societal things influence what happens in the schools. All right. So that continues to be a struggle. I see the struggles of school teachers. I knew I had those same struggles when our concert comes up against a sports event or a sport practice, right? So often it's like, well, there's not even a question about that. But the thought that we put, especially if it's our concert, it's like it's like a basketball team that they've been practicing. They have it down to the timing and everything. And suddenly you pull one kid, out of the team. What does that do? So I often use this analogy of a sports team. So to help maybe administrators understand, it's not just one kid missing a choir concert. It's all the work and how it impacts others. So I think that area continues to be a struggle. I think in these political times that we live in, a lot of that has seeped into, the classroom as well. So the struggles of teachers, I think, are elevated because of that. During the pandemic, as a collegiate conductor, it was hard enough. I would go into a 50-minute rehearsal because we were masked, we were distanced, and all of that. I would come out of a 50-minute rehearsal feeling like I've just done a 4-hour all-state rehearsal. The energy expended, right, in trying to get everybody, pulling it out of them. So since then, my heroes are school teachers, music teachers, the elementary, the middle school, the high school teachers, the day-to-day in the trenches, what they have to deal with. It was nothing compared to what I dealt with as a collegiate conductor. Yeah. So I think that those are some areas. And even as we've, come out of the pandemic, I think there are still residual effect from that. Right? All those years of, Zoom classes. One of my former students said the kids didn't know how to do choir anymore because they've not been in a room. If I may share a brief story. So our first time back, this was with my own Calvin Capella. We were still distanced. I could hardly see them. I was like 20 feet away. And we had returned to school. And I just did a warm-up and just a very simple 5-note warm-up. And I began noticing that, I call them my kiddos, okay, because I'm the choir mama. I began noticing that some of my kiddos were crying. And I said, if I stopped the warm-up, I said, okay, Capella kiddos, click save. We're always clicking save, right? When we're writing our papers or doing something on the computer. I said, click save to this moment, because we did not know when we were going to come back. And the first time you heard human sound surrounding you, See how moving it was. From henceforth, don't complain about coming to rehearsal. No, but it's like, and sometimes I do too. I'm like, okay, here comes another rehearsal. I'm running out of bananas to eat to kind of fuel me for the next hour of rehearsal. But then I thought to those days, and I think it's those lessons that to click save the hard times that we came out of, and therefore what we have to enjoy. But yes, there are still residual effects from there. And I think in all different aspects, in publishing, in music making, in concert attendance.
Oh, wow. Well, you covered so much in that answer, Dr. Shangkuan. From talking about some of the incredible progress that we've made as a field and the opportunities that we have to continue to connect with one another and encourage conversation and active listening through music and having understanding of different people and different perspectives that are not our own, I think remains one of the most powerful tools that we have as musicians. And I also think that you're touching on our educators was so powerful. It's so true. It's very difficult out there, and we, as those in the collegiate sphere and those who are not in the K through 12 classroom every day anymore, need to be more and more cognizant about how we can help and give back to the field actively and make sure that our teachers know that we are resources for them. We would love to hear a little bit about your leadership experiences. You talked a lot about being at Calvin and what it's like every day for you. Can you speak a little bit about being a leader in ACDA and talk about maybe some of the best moments from that experience, and if you would suggest that others get involved in roles like these?
Oh, definitely. Volunteer. That's the first way, right? Volunteer. Just say you will be welcome with open arms, I guarantee you. But, they're just filled with so many moments. All the time that I was state, and then it was called division, now regional president, and now national president. And like, people will say, what is like being in a room or organizing a conference or corralling a group of choral directors? I said, let me tell you, it is the most fun because everybody knows what it means to lead and to follow. Right? And they have become, the people I served along with have become my support system. These have now become lifelong friends because of all that we've gone through that. And people not in the choral business think that's a paid position. That's what I call a 3 a.m. work, freebie work. But we're all in it to serve the membership. It's not something I aspired to, especially the national president. But when I received that call, it took me, they gave me a short amount of time to think about it. And it was to give back to the organization that has been so helpful in my growth as a choral director. There has to be that sense of mission, sense of wanting to serve our membership. So that's kind of what keeps me like, all right, I will keep doing this, but I will also tell you the team. So I sit on the national board, and last evening I had a meeting with the executive committee. So that's the generations of past president, VP, president-elect, and all of that. I look around this Zoom room and I think, it is such a privilege for me to work with them and to learn from them, but also their heart for service. I don't feel alone. I feel there's a great support system. I feel Robin and her team in the national office is right there. We're all in this together. So no matter how daunting it may feel on certain days, like, what did I get myself into? It still feels so much like I have a support system. I have people I can tap into, I can seek advice from. I was on the board of Chorus America for a couple of years, and that too is a very different organization than ACDA, but I also learned tremendously. Yes, people look at these as positions within the professional industry. But repeatedly, over and over again, I see that heart for service. You can't pay these people enough for that. The hours and hours of work, and sometimes the issues we have to deal with, right?
I think that concept of the servant leadership is just so powerful, and something that when you're moving so fast, sometimes it can be easy to leave that to the side. And when we think back to what is the reason that I'm in this, what are these organizations that have been so integral? How can I give back in even just the tiniest way? It doesn't have to be becoming president-elect of ACDA at this point in time for everyone, but can you volunteer to be the name tag person? Can you volunteer to just be present in maybe the scope of a leader and just be there if they need something? Just to be a presence and to get involved and to support these organizations that are working so hard to support us. So I think you just said that so beautifully, and recognizing the teamwork aspect that in choral leadership is so prevalent. I think we're in a really beautiful phase of the world where we're looking at the we versus the I in choral music. And so I think this is an extension of that, where it's not just the sage on the stage, but it's really us as a community coming together. And when is it your turn to lead? And when is it your turn to follow? And that's that musical dance that we're leading all the time that can be applied also into service. We have one final question of the main portion of the interview, and then just a couple quick, fun get to know you questions at the end. And so we started this podcast because we felt like we were having really important conversations with women leader in the field, especially, that we wanted other people to know about. And we're asking some questions that we've talked even about today, family life and balance and all sorts of insights that we think are invaluable to the field. And one question we ask every guest that comes on is there a time where you faced discrimination? And what tricks or suggestions might you have to overcome situations when you might find yourself in a place of adversity? Because this is something sometimes people find themselves in. And we'd love to know any wisdom you might have.
It is a daily reality for me from different angles. If I may share a story or an experience, which I hope your listeners will understand, it comes from the side of its humanity. Right? So after the pandemic broke, and this is not in any way a political discussion, but the experience of this conductor. Not long after the pandemic happened, people like me were called by a very derogatory term, and I'll say it because sometimes people don't realize that we were the Chinese virus. I remember a few months later, I was about to conduct at Carnegie Hall. After that term was widely used, there was a series of very violent acts against Asian Americans. I remember seeing pictures of a man who actually eerily looked like my own husband, whose face had been slashed by box cutters. There were stories of middle-aged Asian women pushed off from the curb of the streets. People pushed down the subway. Okay. So going back to New York to be conducting at Carnegie, it was something else for me every morning before I walked to rehearsal to remind myself to not walk too close to the curb, because I fit the profile of somebody like that. In our choral world, somebody might look at me with somebody with a certain level of recognition or whatever. But in my daily life, it isn't that. So those are the things I have to deal with, right? And it was just every day I walk to Carnegie with that in mind. That's one of the most dramatic experiences I had last year. I was vacationing with my family and transiting through a major metropolitan airport. And we realized after sitting there for a long time that we weren't being served breakfast. And then we realized we were the only ones that looked different in that corner of the restaurant. So these are daily realities, right? For somebody like me outside of this choral bubble. When I started out, now here's on the funny side, I had my very first international gig. So we got the letter and saying when you had to arrive by. So I arrived by, and I remember bringing my kids with me. They were going to stay with my husband and everything. So I show up and I said, oh, here's somebody, who looked like an organizer. So I said, okay, hey, I'm here. And this person looks at me and say, oh, you're not supposed to be here. you guys are coming tomorrow. I said, no. You told the faculty to come here. Now, those were the days before Facebook, Zoom, and anything, right? So people didn't really know what you looked like by the time you arrived. And so this person said, oh, you know what? We're expecting somebody older. I was in my late 20s then. And we were expecting a male conductor. So I kind of looked at this person and say, well, you got me. Here I am. You invited me. Here I am. So from those days, to this day, I have all kinds of funny. At one time, I arrived at an Allstate. I had my backpack on. I was lining up, and bless his heart, the teacher, I love her. She was writing down, and she kind of glanced up a little bit at me and said, go line up with the other sopranos or something. And I said, well, I'm the conductor. And she looked up, oh, I'm so sorry. Maybe because of my petite size. And here me, with my backpack and such. So, getting those, it's a reality for me. I always can tell. I can tell expressions by, when I am somebody who's not recognized then until, oh, you're the guest conductor. The treatment often is different.
And now, a quick word from our sponsors.
Conductor, 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 conductor.
Hi, I'm Jocelyn Hagan, composer and founder of Compose Like a Girl, a choral series dedicated to empowering composers who identify as women through mentorship, publication, and promotion. With over 30 pieces in the series, with many different voicings, we're showcasing fresh, compelling music like Womankind by Emily Drum, The Infinity of Space by Ritika Bhattacharjee, and When I Become an Old Woman by Sherry Blevins. Explore the catalog at jocelynhagan.com/composelikeagirl and graphitepublishing.com.
And we're back.
I have learned to live with that. I think what keeps me grounded it doesn't get to me. I just feel, by being polite in return, I don't see anything. I just try to be nice because I think then that influences, right, that person's perception of who somebody that looks like you feel. Because of my very frequent travels, I'm usually upgraded to business class, and I'm usually the only one that looks like me. And I can tell you, I can write a book of experiences that I have being that person, the varying level of treatment. What keeps me grounded is my dad, who, even though he wasn't a musician, I would say to this day, even though he's gone on many years, remains the most influential person in my life. So much of who I am is from him. And he would say, Pearl, never let anyone tell you that you can't do anything because of your gender or your race. He died when I was working on my doctoral program. Yeah. So he never saw the other side of that. It's almost like he could see from afar and think that perhaps someday, my youngest would do something of her own. But it is something that has been so deeply ingrained in me. So whenever I face these situations, I'm just like, well, that's what I'm doing. I am doing this because in the New Testament, there's a parable of the rich person with the servants with different number of talents. I've always felt, and this is not in any way about false modesty or anything, I've always felt I'm the one with the one talent. Because yes, I have this, I can do this. I am terrible at so many other things. Okay, this is what I can do. And so this is what my one talent. So when I step on the podium, I don't think of myself as a woman conductor, male conductor, whatever. I think of myself as that person whom my Creator has given that one talent. And have you used it? So someday when I stand in front of my Creator, can I honestly say that I have developed and use this one talent to the best of my ability. I think because of those kind of credo, it helps me to deal with all these other stuff that that's part of my daily reality. Yeah. We had a neighbor who sent out a Christmas letter and had that phrase in there and sent it to my family. Yes. And I am like, wow, I slept on it first because I could feel the smoke coming out of my ears. And I think just not realizing. So, and I wrote back a very pointed note, but said, especially as an educator, as a fellow educator, we understand that words matter. Because when that happened, I was repeatedly told, well, that's just the way somebody speaks. No, it has real life consequences for people. And so we as educators, words matter. We as leaders, words matter. Who we are will come out the way that we lead. And are we unifying, galvanizing our people or not? So all of these lessons, I realize in the choral bubble, sometimes one may not think about it, but I do want to share with your listeners that it is a daily reality. For someone like me, ACDA, I am grateful. Yes, I'm a little fearful of, all of the work that's yet to come, but also in that the ACDA membership can see that a woman of color can lead us. That says a lot about what we are as an organization. And it's not something that I often say because I'm just trying to get through rehearsal. We're doing all this music work. But there are moments where I think these are important moments that we need to stop and think. What are we saying? What are we doing?
Wow. I think there's just, I just want to thank you for sharing all of that, Dr. Shangkuan. I think that that's the only response that can really adequately, can adequately sum up what you just said. But we appreciate your vulnerability and your honesty, and thank you for being willing to come on and share all of these experiences, the good and the bad, with our listeners. And just want to echo that we're here for you, and we are elated to have you as a leader in the field and are ready to help whatever you need. And we know that someone will listen to this episode and be changed by what you said. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me over. And I'll remember those coupons.
Good. Well, in closing, Dr. Shangkuan, we just have a few questions. These are called our Fast Five. And so these are supposed to be just quick, top of the brain moments that can share with our listeners that are insightful about you in closing. And so the first one is, do you have a favorite current choral octavo or composer recommendation that you would like to share with the listeners?
Oh my goodness. It's like, how do you pick a favorite kid, right? Yeah, I'm working on Bach right now. And it's an excerpt of the B minor mass, that's always kind of like my big high point, in the choral world might know of my frequent collaboration with my partner in crime, Dan Forrest. These two are thick as thieves, always planning all kinds of things. But, we are so rich for having the resources of living composers. I just kind of put that out very quickly because those are some of the music I'm currently working on.
Beautiful. You can never go wrong with Bach. All right, Dr. Shangkuan, what is one misconception about you?
Oh, my goodness. I don't know. Maybe I should have asked my students. They probably think I'm maybe super strict. Yeah. I don't know. Like a mom. I just tend to think of myself as a mom. I'm trying to get everybody moving. Or maybe here's one, because when people see, conductors out on stage, they think you're very much an extrovert. I'm like the actual opposite. very, very introverted. My husband would say, if you leave her alone, she'd be a hermit. My happy place is a really good book. And ever since a kid, my mom would say, Pearl, get your face out of that book, because that book was always, since I discovered I could read, every meal I have a book right in front of my face, a good book and a cup of tea and absolute silence. That's kind of like a happy place for me. I've learned how to develop people skills. I'm one of those that have to shut down, have enough time, alone time, just so I don't short circuit.
Wonderful. Number 3 is, what is one word to describe you as a conductor teacher?
I have no idea what people say about me. I think hopefully it's passionate. I hope not in a kind of crazy, over dramatic way, but that you can sense the passion behind at all different styles of music that I do.
We can confirm. All right. Number 4 is silly. So just prepare yourself. Do you have a choral blooper that you could share?
I had this choir that I was taking to ACDA division, and it was a premiere that we were going to do at the Central Division Conference. And so we were learning it, trying to memorize it. And I used my hands because I figure nobody can see me. And I used my fingers to cue the words that were coming after, one after another. Well, so in the midst of this is our first public run, and they were singing from memory, and I was cueing, and suddenly I saw the facial expression of my choir members. And I looked down, and it was one finger that shouldn't be up on its own, pointing up. I was just, and let me tell you, we were singing in chapel. Oh my goodness. So,
That might be in my top 2 ever blooper moments. That's amazing. And you know what? I bet they remember that piece to this day. Oh my gosh, Dr. Shangkuan, that is so fabulous. Our last one for today, which is taking a turn in a different direction. You've shared so many wonderful musical moments throughout our interview together, but we are just going to say, if there's one more, whether it's a favorite choral memory or favorite musical moment that you would want to share to close out the interview today.
Oh, there are so many. Obviously, doing the National SSAA Honor Choir, oh my goodness, I will treasure that forever. My collaborations with Dan in England, in Normandy, and all of that. This is a way behind the scenes story. So I had taken my Calvin Women's Chorale to China, the land of my ancestors, right? So we were walking around in the Great Wall of China, and my students started singing Lift Thine Eyes, because that was part of the repertoire. So we were flying back. We were at the Beijing International Airport. And I thought, I had just done this tour. It was my first visit to China. And I thought this was the country that my father left as a persona non grata because of how vocal he was about the government. Here I was able to return to the land of my ancestors and to conduct, and they were looking at this Chinese woman conducting her all Dutch choir. Every stop we go, they're kind of trying to figure out all this relationship, especially if I wear the same t-shirt as my students. They're trying to figure out, where is the teacher? Where is the teacher? And I'm the teacher. So anyway, we were at the Beijing International Airport, and my heart was so full for all of that experience. And the students, they just started singing. We were right at the boarding gate. They started singing Lift Thine Eyes. And I'm just sitting there after 19 days of tour, I'm near coma, okay? But what I saw was a man directly across from me. And he just looked so stunned. And I thought, oh my goodness, have we done something? And then his face crumbled. And he puts his head down into his hands, and his shoulders started shaking. And I thought, something is happening. We boarded the flight, and then he comes to where I am seated on the plane and said, "Are you the teacher?" I said, "Yes, I am." He said, "When your students began to sing, I need to tell you my story. My daughter, Mackenzie, loved to sing. She sang in a choir. She was also a swimmer. She was 15 years old. One day she was in a swim meet, got up out of the swimming pool, collapsed, and died. And since then, I could never go to a concert. I could never hear choral music because it was just too hard. But when your students started singing, that, that pain that he was going through, but also part of that healing journey. He was traveling on business to China. And how the impact of that music in such an informal way, early in the morning, at the end of a 19 or whatever many day tour, could speak to one person and be part of this healing journey of a loss that's unbearable for a parent. Wow. Could never, ever forget that. That is one of many, actually, such experiences I've had. And so you treasure and ponder them in your heart. And I'm just truly grateful for this life that affords us these kinds of memories and opportunities and experiences.
Oh, that was perfect. That was just perfect. I was struck by so many things you shared with us today, Dr. Shangkuan, and was moved to tears multiple times and just feel reminded and grateful and thankful to be here with you today and to have shared this time. I just loved every second of this. I was thinking about your name, Pearl, and I was like, it's the perfect name for you because you're beautiful and you're unique and been through hardships and you represent hope and something exciting and invigorating for others. So just thank you for being here.
Well, thank you so much for having me over. And if I see you in Dallas, please, I hope we get to meet, even just for a quick hug.
Yes.
We would be honored.
We're so grateful for you tuning in. We hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we did. Check us out on social media and conducther.com, and we'll be back again soon.
Thank you for listening. This has been Conductor. This episode was engineered and mixed by Mary Hannah Klontz with intro and outro music by Chloe Garut and ad music by Kate Crellin.
Discover more resources at conductor.com.